Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're very pleased today to have Commissioner of Insurance, Mike Causey, and also Chief Deputy Commissioner, Dr. Michelle Osborne, joining us. Commissioner Causey and Dr. Osborne, thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you, Aubie. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I want to start off and really just publicly thank you both for the leadership that you all have exerted during this time of crisis. The level of communication that we've had with you all, and your openness to listen to issues that are really impacting agents right now, and your responsiveness towards those issues. So thank you both very much for that. I know it's not easy to be in an executive capacity during this time of crisis. So thank you both very much for all your hard work and for listening to the needs of the independent insurance agents during this time.
Well, it's our pleasure, and thank you and the Big I for all that you've done to keep agents informed and keep us informed of what's happening.
Well, great. Commissioner, would you like to, I guess, just open up with some general remarks about the department's overall response, what you're seeing from the insurance industry, and any insights that you have there that you might want to get into?
Yes, I'll be glad to. Thank you, Aubie and Joe. We've been very busy the past few weeks. The majority of our employees are working from home, as most state employees are. We do have a crew that goes into the office every day. Some people are going in every day, some of our IT folks and some of our other leadership. And we started this week with more of our division managers going into the office. I talked to the Georgia Department of Insurance yesterday. They're doing basically what we are, and they told me that most of their employees will start coming back next week. I talked to the commissioner in Colorado last Friday, and he says they're also mostly working from home, but this week they were starting with more of their employees going into the department, and each week they'll have a few more. So we're looking at it day by day. I think Governor Cooper's done a good job of leadership, as well as the other members of the Council of State. We've had a great response from the insurance industry. I had a good call a couple of weeks ago from the CEO of Allstate, who updated us and told me at that point that 95% of the Allstate employees were working from home. I've been out and about, some following the social distancing guidelines, and I can tell you that there are a lot of businesses that are very busy, especially tire shops and some of the auto parts places, garden centers, things like that. But everywhere I've been, the businesses are using guidelines. They have tape marked on the floors for 6-foot spacing. Places like Walmart, the employees are wearing masks. So I think a lot of our small businesses are hurting because so many are closed. So I know a lot of those small businesses are looking forward to getting things open again as soon as we can, but we want to do it safely. This morning I signed an extension order on the order that I had signed on March 27, 2020 under General Statute 58-246. And you'll see that coming in shortly. And we're just getting into updates like you are every day and asking people to stay safe, continue practicing the social distancing. And I tell everybody that the Department of Insurance is here to help. there's not a day that goes by that I don't get a personal phone call from somebody that has an issue. And I'm happy to tell you that those issues get handled pretty quickly when I give them to our consumer division or whatever division that needs to be handled.
Commissioner, you mentioned a conversation that you had with the CEO of Allstate. They're one of the companies that have announced, I guess their television commercials refer to them as discounts or givebacks to policyholders. I know that I think it was last week that your department issued how you all are going to be dealing with companies that are looking to give some premium relief to the consumers. Is that something that you would care to address? I know a lot of agents have some questions about this because they're getting calls from their customers going, "Hey, I'm insured with Progressive or Allstate or whatever company. I'm seeing them on the news saying they're going to give me back some money. When can I expect that?"
First of all, in North Carolina, we're set up a little different than the rest of the country, and rebating is one of the issues under the General Statute 583385. And so one of the things that we've had to do is work around the rebating refunding law, which clearly just says that companies cannot give money back unless it's done appropriately. So at the first of this, Commissioner Causey very much wanted to help consumers as carriers saw that there were less accidents and saw that there was a need to help folks during this time. So Allstate was one of the first companies that asked us about doing this. And currently we have over 10 of our top carriers working on this. And we already have many of them approved. And you can do it through 3 different methods. One is through dividends, one's through savings, which is the first option. The second option is through enhancements, or the third one is through the normal rate deviation. So any one of these 3 would work. So some of the carriers like State Farm and USAA have done this through dividends, and Allstate is currently still working with us and doing theirs in the savings. So they're planning to give money back out through savings. We have a lot of carriers like Erie, Utica, Cincinnati, Geico, Amica, Progressive, Travelers, Liberty Mutual, and Penn National that have done this through the enhancements. So the team at the department, when Commissioner Causey requested for us to try to see what we could do to stay within the guidelines of the General Statute 583385, we came up with a enhancement called COVID-19 enhancement. And so the carriers that I just mentioned, Amica, Utica, Erie, Cincinnati, Geico, Progressive, Travelers, Liberty Mutual, Penn National, have all done this through this type of enhancement. We are in discussions right now with Nationwide and Farm Bureau. So that's what's happening right now.
Because I know the one question that agents are getting from consumers right now is, when am I gonna get this money, or
right,
when am I gonna see this credit on my invoice, or whatever so, that's gonna look like.
The companies have just filed for this, so it'll happen during their renewal, most likely. So it takes time for the renewals to hit and for them to receive their new renewals and payment and bills. So, but it should be coming fairly soon, depending on each person's bill.
Okay, great, thank you. One fairly recent development was also the guideline, the directions that you all put out. I believe it was last week in regards to temporary licensing. Would you like to take a moment and review that?
Yeah, so with temporary licensing, it's one of the main questions that we've been asked is what we're going to do about it. And so there's a lot of different moving parts here. First of all, when the first 2 weeks happened with the COVID-19 shelter in place and we were no longer allowed to fingerprint agents, we knew that we needed to come up with some solution. But to give a temporary license meant for someone to actually have to be under the authority of another agent. So to give them a temporary license was a little bit concerning at first, because of the fact that that would mean that you'd have to be working underneath another agent. So really we're wondering, I was wondering, and the Commissioner and I talked about it, we wanted to make it helpful to those that had a desire to take the test and become an agent, but they would still have to work under another agent. So we tried to find something even better, a better solution for that. And so, of course, you also have to have fingerprinting in our state. So we couldn't let anyone get their, they couldn't get their fingerprinting done. So as a result of that, even if we allowed them to have a license or take the test, they'd still need to do that. So what we did was Commissioner Causey and I asked Pearson VUE to see what they could do. And so what they're going to allow is to start opening on May 1st to do testing. And we're going to allow the temporary license to take place. So the only thing that they will need to do then is to wait for the fingerprinting. So I think this will be a very easy way for us and for the industry to deal with this. And also we've requested for our vendors to try to come up with something for the future that will allow some type of online testing so that if we ever experience this again, it will be easier.
Okay, great. And I'm not sure if you would like to get into this issue or if the commissioner, but the commissioner mentioned the Council of State and Governor Cooper, obviously with the stay-at-home order and the essential businesses, and the fact that we are seeing some neighboring states, some other states starting to kind of reopen in phases. What guidance or what I guess advice are you going to have towards insurance agencies, even though they are an essential business and they're allowed to be open? Most right now are operating mostly from home. Do you have any advice about what that transition might look like as more people start going back into the offices to serve their customers in a more conventional, traditional way?
I think,
Well, my initial reaction would be to use common sense and to just do like the businesses that are open now. It said, you've got people that work in retail stores wearing masks. They have a plexiglass shield at the cash register. Just put some little pieces of tape on the floor or carpet 6 feet apart and ask the customers to stand 6 feet apart, that sort of thing. Limit the number of customers that come into the room. I know some of the auto parts stores that I've been to, they'll have a limit of 10. Some of them have a limit of 30, depending on the size. Some of these other states that have opened up have limited the capacity to 20% of the normal fire code. So I think each person can decide on their own what they're comfortable with. They want their policyholders to be comfortable. And certainly if you have an employee that's sick, you don't want them coming to work. You want them to stay home. If you have an employee that has asthma or a weak immune system, they need to continue staying home. But as far as those healthy employees that are willing and able, I don't see any problem with them going in as needed.
Dr. Osborne,
I think we're moving in that direction. I think I know the governor and the Council of States looking at it every week on looking at the numbers. They're looking at the data to see what can we do safely. And it's not the same in each county. We have some counties in this state with no cases, and then you have counties, Mecklenburg and Wake, that have a lot of cases. So it's different depending on the situation. And one thing, Aubie, I meant to clarify when I first started on that extension order that I signed this morning.
Yes, sir.
That this was the premium deferrals and the debt payment structure that was extended another 30 days from April 27th to May 27th. So the agents might want to know that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Dr. Osborne, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would like to share that if agents are seeing any kind of cancellation notice, and you're in consumer receiving cancellation notices, we need to know that. So I'd like for you to let us know at 1-855-408-1212 or asd@ncdoi.gov, because the consumer should not be receiving cancellation notices And a few more things I'd like to add to that is if you have a consumer who needs to defer payment, we need for them to do that on a case-by-case situation. Just because there is a deferment does not mean that the agent does not need to actually call the company and work with the carrier to find out some kind of payment plan. Because as soon as the 30 days is up, the additional 30 days, and there's no more deferment, those bills will come due and there'll be an automatic cancellation. And the agents really have a lot on their plate to do all this. So we want to make for sure that they're aware that it just doesn't automatically non-cancel inevitably. They have to actually work with the carrier for this.
Okay. Speaking of deferrals and deferments, one of the first things I think that we communicated with you all about, and you guys were very accommodating for us, was the CE deferral for agents. I guess personally speaking, our operation has been most impacted by having to cancel all of our CE classes, and that certainly has impact on the agents as well. So thank you all specifically for that deferment. What are the mechanics involved? If my license, for instance, is renewed in June, is there anything special I need to do if I'm unable to get my CE between now and June?
Commissioner Causey and I have both discussed it, and we are willing to take it step by step and make for sure that we give every agent the opportunity to get this done and completed. So for someone like yourself, it's in June. If we need to extend it, we're going to do so as time shows us the need to do so.
Okay, great. We've got a question in from one of the viewers. If a policyholder fails to pay the premium at the end of the deferral period, what becomes the cancellation date of the policy? And then is there any difference between whether the policy was agency billed or direct billed by the carrier?
So that will actually go back to the date of the original. That's why I was sharing earlier that it's when you as an agent need to make for sure you continue to have conversations with the clients, telling them that we need to work with the carrier. So on a case-by-case situation and get them set up on a payment plan that they can work with. So it's very important that agents are very actively involved in this now so that when this time period is up of deferment, that those folks are not going to be hit with an automatic cancellation back to the original date.
One of the really interesting things that has been happening over the last few weeks is all of this discussion about business interruption insurance, business income insurance. So much so that I guess you all probably saw the president even made comment on this last week or perhaps a week before in one of his daily press conferences. We've seen some legislation being introduced in other states regarding this issue, and then I know that NCOIL and the National Association of Insurance Commissioners have come out with statements about this. Do you guys have any thoughts or want to make any comments on that issue?
Well, that's a hot topic, Aubie, for sure. And I spent a lot of time last week talking with the North Carolina Agribusiness Council on that subject, and they had talked with other states and some of these states that had introduced legislation and were telling me that there's some movement in Congress that if the states would enact legislation to force insurance companies to pay these claims, then Congress would end up paying it. I think that'll be a tough sell. You know, my heart goes out to these business owners that are affected, but the legal part is that the pandemics are excluded under these policies. So if you start down that road of forcing the insurance company to pay an excluded item, you know, where does it end? So I think there'll be a lot of discussions about that at the state level and the federal level, and we'll just see how it plays out.
Commissioner, this is Joe Stewart. I know that you'd said earlier that you might need to step off the call because of another scheduled appointment. We don't want to hold you up if you need to depart at this point.
Yeah, I've got a 1:30 I need to take. So go ahead, Joe. Did you have another question?
No, sir. Just want to make sure we were being respectful of your time. You were gracious enough to give us this opportunity to let the agents hear from you, but I didn't want to hold you up if you needed to depart.
Well, thank you. If y'all have any solutions to that business interruption insurance, tell us, because we're looking for the same answers you are. So
Yes, sir.
thank you for doing this, and I want to thank all the agents for what they're doing out on the front lines, and particularly our healthcare workers and first responders that are out there every day keeping us safe. So thank you all for everything you're doing.
Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate you joining us so much. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
And if I can help you with anything, just call me directly or call the office, and there's somebody there that will get you some help any day. So thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And Dr. Osborne, I'd gotten a text directly from someone watching the session asking the question of clarification about the temporary license issue. Is it that the agent would have had to pass the pre-licensing course and then, assuming the sites can open up, take the licensing exam, that they are then given a temporary license until such time the background check can be done? Is that the right sequence?
Yes, that's correct. The applicant will need to first complete the pre-licensing education and take that exam, and then the applicant should complete the license application through the NIPR, just like they have in the past. And then once the applicant has successfully passed the exam, the agency division will actually issue a temporary license. And then this license will remain in effect for about 120 days. And the applicant will be required to complete fingerprinting process, because that's 5833-66 says in our state that you have to have fingerprinting. So we're allowing this extra time for the fingerprinting until those fingerprinting offices are open.
Right. Thank you very much.
And I also want to share that there are not going to be any additional cost for the temporary license or for your application, so you all need to know that. And if the license is made inactive, the licensee must request a review of some sort before that will be reestablished. So, and I want to also say that unfortunately, if someone should fail the exam, there is no refund, just as it always works in the regular examination period.
Fair enough, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess they have longer to study, right?
Yeah. More focused time.
And we really struggled with the temporary license, because there's a lot more to it than just giving someone a temporary license. We thought about it like, if we gave someone a temporary license and they couldn't pass the exam, then what would that do to an agent? The agency, they would have to say, I'm sorry, Mr. John Smith, but they failed the test and they couldn't pass the exam. So those are the kinds of things that we felt like this was more doable and allowing folks to get back in and take the exam. So we appreciate our vendor, Pearson VUE, allowing this and going ahead and opening up the testing sites.
All right. So, Dr. Osborne, in addition to so we've talked about deferring of CE and the licensing issues. We've talked about the carrier issues, both from the cancellation. Well, really that's a consumer issue, but the carriers are certainly heavily involved in that component. And then the COVID-19 enhancements in terms of the carriers wanting to provide some financial relief to consumers. What are some of the other things that you all are dealing with that are a direct result of the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, I think some of the first things that we experienced was dealing with the health insurance industry, and they've responded really well. Also, worried about telehealth, making sure that we helped every way we could in getting telehealth working. So we brought the industry in and chatted with them, actually through a conference call. And we spoke with the providers to see what we could do on our side through general statute to see if there's any way that we could make things easier in that regard. Some other things that we're always looking at is solvency. So, the stock market has plummeted. Fortunately, insurance companies usually only put about 25% of their investments in the stock market, but we know that we're all being affected by this, and it will be interesting to see what plays out. So those are the things that we look at as a department, is solvency, and making sure that we do everything we can to keep the marketplace stable.
Okay. We've had a couple of other questions come in from the viewers. One is back on policy cancellations, looking for some clarity. It says, can carriers send notice of cancellation and address deferment if contacted by the insured and the agent?
The insurance company should not be sending any cancellation notices at this time. So
Okay.
finance companies should not as well. So again, if you're finding that the insurance carriers are continuing to send cancellation notices to your agency or to the insureds, this needs to stop. And please notify myself. It's michelle.osborne@ncdoi.gov, or you can contact ASD at ncdoi.gov. Or you can actually call us at 1-855-408-1212. We need to know, because the commissioner has declared that they are not to be sending out cancellation notices at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarity. Speaking of ASD and the Agent Services Division, another question has come in. Is the Agent Services Division still continuing to conduct agency examinations during this time?
Yeah, during this time, Commissioner Causey requested that we do not do any type of on-site agency visits or agency reviews or any type of test or reviews of them at all. What we're asking for them to do is do this over the online. So we're actually asking them to send their bank statements. So we still are doing them. We're not doing any target exams. So we're holding off on target exams so we can actually go to the agency. So for right now, there will not be any agency target exams. And if it's a hardship for an agent, if they have a family member who has COVID or something that's really tough for them right now, on a case-by-case situation, we will certainly even not do the desk exam. We're calling it a desk exam, and hold off on that.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Dr. Osborne, I had a question. You know, the legislature, the House in particular, has been meeting for the last couple of weeks remotely, but talking about a package of proposals that it will consider when it reconvenes on April 28th, dealing with issues specific to COVID-19 in North Carolina. Some of it may be necessary tweaks to make us eligible for federal assistance that's available. Some of it is a lessening of regulatory burdens in a variety of ways to try to expedite the recovery of the economy. Anything in particular that the Department of Insurance is looking to include in that package? Any changes or modifications to regulatory or other statutes that you think are necessary for the department to deal with the current situation?
I think the one thing that we will continue to look at is a disaster plan even for us. You know, we always need more money because things like this have caused us to have a lot more work. And we always need more employees. And of course, the Department of Insurance falls under the General Assembly with regards to the budget. So I think one of the things that we need is we need more money to help prepare for disasters like this, because it takes more funding. We are the Office of the State Fire Marshal and also the firemen. Since it falls under us, there's a lot of areas in which I think Commissioner was looking at in regards to that. And yes, through this, we've learned a lot, as I think the whole industry has. Prior to the internet, which I'm old enough to remember, and I'm sure you two are as well, I remember thinking when I first heard of cybersecurity, I was like, how could there be any kind of coverage for cybersecurity? And look what the industry and the world has done. Now we can quantify the risk, and when you can quantify a risk, then you can find usually a market to insure it. The same thing with identity theft. You know, we before the internet and identity theft was so common, we never really thought about how we would insure identity theft. So I think even business interruption, it will be interesting to see what happens with this and the pandemic. Hopefully this will not be normal for us, but who knows what normalcy will be. But the wonderful thing about the insurance industry is when you can quantify something, then we can determine whether or not there's an ability to insure that risk. And whether or not, if there is a way to insure it, will folks be willing to pay that price? So I think with business interruption, with regards to pandemic, whether it be Congress or whether it be a state level. I know the commissioner and I have talked about it, and we're willing to do whatever it takes as far as if the Congress and the federal government or the state government decides to do something like an NFIP or a terrorism act, we will certainly be willing to work with them with regards to, you know, helping with actuarial studies. And if they decide to do something like a beach plan or something like that, we'll certainly work with them to develop that.
And you touched on this, and the commissioner did in his remarks as well, this issue of business interruption coverage and the fact that there's been now formed a national organization, primarily of restaurateurs, trying to compel Congress to change the law, in effect, and make carriers honor claims that are not covered under the policies that these businesses had in place. The national big eyes worked on an initiative perhaps to create a disaster relief fund, such as created after 9/11 for businesses that were economically impacted by that event. We've talked a little bit about this in our conversations between the independent insurance agents and the department, and we're monitoring this very closely. The issue's been raised in these House hearings at the state level, whether or not any legislation is forthcoming to try to compel payment of these claims. But give us your thoughts, what the department has said specifically about carriers and honoring business interruption claims, and maybe some of the bigger public policy issues that might emerge after this pandemic is over about what carriers might need to have in place to even be able to consider offering coverage for another event like this.
I think first of all, we're dealing with contractual law, and when an insurance company has a contract with an insured, it states that the pandemics are excluded. So, you know, we at the department do not have the authorization to change contractual law. So therefore we, you know, have to allow for the carriers to exclude this because it's not in the contract to cover it. So that's first, even though it is upsetting because you see so many people suffering right now. As I was stating, prior to the internet, prior to cybersecurity, prior to identity theft, we would have never thought we could have come up with a way to cover these things. But, you know, I think we will continue to look at ways to deal with this business interruption. But at $400 billion a month, the industry could not afford to cover this because they would go bankrupt and there would be no industry to regulate. So, and those are things that the whole world's going to have to deal with. You know, we're going to have to come up with something. But what that is going to take a lot of work and a lot of research. I mean, we're still just learning what to do with flood. I mean, this year we've just come out with a private flood policy, and we're getting that forward, moving that forward, and we can see how long we've struggled with coverage of flood insurance because there are some risks that are just difficult to quantify and difficult to rate and difficult to find placement for.
Dr. Osborne, you mentioned your need for further disaster planning, and I think this crisis has certainly opened up a lot of organizations' mind about and individuals and families about whether we had adequate measures in place to deal with a disaster like this. What thoughts have you all given as we are going to be hopefully at the tail end of the COVID crisis as we enter into hurricane season, and what the compounding effect of the potential of having to deal with multiple crises going on simultaneously, what that might look like?
Aubie, that's one of the things that the Commissioner and I've been talking about now is, you know, April's known for the tornadic storms, which we have already encountered unusual weather patterns again this April. And we saw what happened in South Carolina with fatalities all around us and other states. So we are preparing for that, you know. So right now we're looking at ways to deal with it's really becoming more modernized. So like knowing how to deal with the temporary license, those kinds of things that we would have never thought we would have had to been forced to do. I think the key is having updated technology and technology that can work through this. You know, having been a professor in the past, I used to do a lot of online teaching, and I always said that one day we're all going to be online, and mainly all the time. And I think that's where we're going. And for us at our department, when this first happened, Commissioner Causey and I got together and said we need to make for sure that our business continuum plan is ready. And so when you're talking about a disaster plan for us, well, we're in a very tight budget. So when you're looking at we have about 500 employees. When you have 500 employees working remotely, there's a lot more expense in making sure that we have the software to do so, the computers to do so, the phone systems to do so. So those are the kinds of things that you wouldn't really normally even think were a consideration. But I'm sure the agents who are on here today, you're experiencing the same thing. You're having to learn how to do business completely remote. And we're going to have to learn how to do more claims remotely. The wonderful things, we have the drones and we have the different kinds of things. So we'll have to look more at legislation on how do we deal with the world of being online, and how do we deal with settling claims in a different way. So those are some of the things that we're looking at very closely.
Yeah, well, it's certainly often been said that necessity is the mother of all invention, right? And I think in this instance, crisis has really been a catalyst for innovation. I think that this crisis is going to have driven more technological innovation, not only among our school systems, our insurance agents, our government entities than half a decade's worth of preaching and talking about innovation and the need to be more technologically savvy could ever do. So it's, I guess that's perhaps a silver lining that's coming out of this for a lot of us.
And particularly for us being a regulatory agency, we have to really look at every single statute and law, even with the giving the money back to the consumers. You would have thought it would have just been an easy thing. Companies are getting a lot more extra money because people aren't driving, they're not having accidents, but we have to stay within those statutes of 58, 33, 85, and to go around those is very difficult. And so I think the legal team, the whole Department of Insurance, the team has done a great job thinking outside the box. So even though so many call us bureaucrats, I think we've learned really much to think outside the box and learn how to deal with a new world of social distancing and working out of our homes.
Well, I purposely did not use the phrase bureaucrat, but if I had slipped up and said that, you know that I would have only meant it in the kindest of ways.
Well, I will say the team here has done amazing, and I think they have thought outside the box with everything. So,
and one of the things that we've heard about too, speaking of things that were not anticipated in terms of workers' compensation for frontline folks responding to this pandemic who contract the disease themselves, what specifically are you seeing from the department's standpoint relative to workers' comp claims that are coming forward out of this pandemic?
So one of the questions that we have had is, will the first responders be covered for workers' comp? And the answer is yes, if they catch it while they are on duty. So it's a case-by-case situation, because the insurance company has to make for sure that they actually received or contacted or contracted the disease while on duty. So because they could have got it from a family member. So those are some of the questions surrounding workers' comp. So there is coverage, but it depends on how they contracted it. And that's the reason why it has to be case by case.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, I mean, I've never been in that sort of litigation or claims process, but I'm assuming with the contagious disease, it will be very difficult to show where, that you got it at point A and not at, did I get it when I was at the office, or did I get it at the convenience store when I stopped for gas on the way to the office? So that's seems like that would be a very difficult process.
It would be, and I would think they would have to err on the side of coverage versus not coverage. But that's why that we have an industrial commission that looks at that case by case.
A question from one of the viewers, Dr. Osborne. You had mentioned you'd mentioned a fairly significant list of companies that you guys have either been in communication with or that have perhaps actually filed for the COVID-19 enhancements for the automobile insurance. Are those listed on the website? And could we be provided with a list of those so that we could supply those to members so they could in turn supply them to consumers and have some idea of which companies are in active communication with you all on that issue?
We will get that list out to you, and it's continuing to grow. So it's one of the reasons why we haven't shared it yet, is because we're in the middle of working on those filings. And those filings the COVID enhancement is a very easy filing. So it should be very easy for carriers to be able to file for this.
I hate to be Debbie Downer, but wanted to bring everybody to the recognition that June 1st is hurricane seasons. You've done a phenomenal job in the department trying to bring a greater awareness about the necessity of flood coverage, and done a lot to help ensure that we can start at least a private flood market. Anything about those efforts as we start to think about the start of hurricane season that you want to share?
I'm glad you asked. So we are going to continue to offer the free flood classes to real estate agents as well as to the insurance agents. We're actually working on making that even a larger group. Perhaps the architects and engineers, we're actually working on that. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to try to offer that online. If we're still in shelter in place, we're going to try to start allowing the flood insurance classes to be online. And again, I would really encourage the insurance agents to take this, because even if you don't think you're in a flood zone, so many people don't know that the Piedmont area is more prone to flooding than any other part of our state. And of course, we know the mountains, recently we've had mudslides, and mudslides are covered under flood. As I know, I'm speaking to an audience that knows this, but so many consumers don't, and real estate agents don't as well. So we're trying to help the insurance market and the real estate market to come together in recognizing the need for flood. And so we will have that is posted on our website, so you can look at the classes and when they're offered. And again, if we're still in shelter in place, we are preparing to put it online. And also we want to encourage, we've actually are working with the bail bondsman industry to allow them to go online as well with their CE. So there's been a lot of moving parts. We've been dealing with the insurance companies and deferment of payments. We've been dealing with solvency. We've been dealing with continuing ed, temporary license, the rebating, refunding statutes. So it's been constant, questions and challenges, but we've learned a lot. So, and we really appreciate the support that the Big I has given to us in communicating and allowing us to communicate as well. We've had a little bit of technical difficulty here today, but it's really good to do this.
We were joking. We have a little sheet, Dr. Osborne. It's like a bingo sheet. So everything that goes wrong in a webinar, you put a disc on it, and all we need right now is for a dog to start barking, and we'll have the bingo straight across the diagonal axis. So
I don't have the service dog here with me.
All right.
My dog, because I'm at the office and
All right.
we're hearing the horns from the protesters. I don't know if you all.
Well, as we wrap up our time here together, I will encourage, if there are any other questions from the viewers, please go ahead and chime in with those now. And if not, Dr. Osborne, I will like to close, and just from a personal standpoint, a lot of us, one thing I've talked to my staff about is as upsetting and as disruptive as this has been, everybody has some silver linings that they've enjoyed. I know a lot of people are getting projects done around the house, and they've had extra time to spend in the garden, or they've rediscovered their love of cooking and having meals with the family. Do you have any silver linings that have come from all of this that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I've been doing FaceTime workout sessions. So in the mornings, I have a personal trainer that makes me get up and work out, and I realize how out of shape I am. So that's one of the things for me, but personally. But I think I've learned what a great industry this is, because I've seen the industry reach out and try to give money back to clients. And I know I've heard a lot from the agents, and they're working really hard in their offices. And a lot of them have asked me if they need some kind of license or some kind of anything that they need to carry in their car to go to and from work. So because of shelter in place, Commissioner Causey, when this first happened, and I know the Big I also worked really hard to do this, we let the governor know that we wanted to include insurance agents as essential persons. And so for all of you that have asked that, no, of course you do not need anything, just to share that you are an insurance agent should work, and maybe have a business card if things were to get kind of, I see with the protesting that people are getting upset and tired of staying at home. So maybe have some kind of ID to show that you're an insurance agent as you go back and forth to work. But I really thank the agents. I know that having been an agent, you're on the front lines, and it's tough because you're the ones having to tell people that there's no coverage for business interruption. And I want to thank you for your work. And I know it's tough. And just want you to know that we are here. We are the regulator, but we are also here to help. And so we have a dual role. And so feel free to reach out to us and let us know what we can do to answer your questions or concerns.
Well, great. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Osborne. Really appreciate it. And as I started off our session with, thank you all so much for your leadership. We really appreciate the level of communication and collaboration that we've had on a number of issues that impact our members. And we're certainly most appreciative of your time joining us here today. I know your schedule's busy and things are crazy. So thank you for taking the time out and talking with us and talking with our members. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you all for taking your time. And Aubie, thank you for your leadership and all that you do at the Big I. Appreciate all the help that you give us and communication opportunity to share. And Joe, thank you as well for always communicating to us. And again, I appreciate all the agents in the industry. And thank you for taking care of the consumers of North Carolina. And I hope you all stay safe.
All right. Same to you, Michelle. See you soon, we hope. Bye-bye.